Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to an episode of the J Area Podcast. My name is Jose Ramos Jr., and on today's episode, we're primarily going to be talking about the Money in the Bank Premium Live event coming this upcoming weekend, airing from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Now, for me personally, the Money in the Bank concept is one of the greatest matches the WWE has ever contributed to the sport of professional wrestling. Not only is it an exciting way to create stars, future stars with future championship opportunities, but the match itself has really had a history of demonstrating what a highlight reel could be regarding around the ideas of ladders. And like I said, anytime you have multi-person matches of a ladder match, it's hard to mess that up. We saw that this past weekend at AEW's Forbidden Door, and now WWE looks to have their own crack at the ladder match this upcoming weekend. Obviously, the WWE has been on fire this last year in general. I mean, you look at the way that Triple H and company have taken over creative and the direction that they've taken the WWE, it is substantially an improvement to what we're used to seeing under Vince McMahon. And obviously, the name Vince McMahon isn't really addressed anymore on WWE TV. But what they've done a real good job of is not only addressing the past and the history that this company has had, but also finding it as a way to move forward into the future. We can't forget about the past while moving towards the future. And with that being said, speaking of the future, let's go ahead and jump right into the predictions, starting with the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. A very competitive field with women such as Zoe Stark, Lyra Valkyria, obviously there's Chelsea Green, Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, just to name a few. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention the current, wouldn't say the current reigning Money in the Bank winner, but the previous winner of the Money in the Bank match, Iyo Sky. Very, very talented in terms of the roster that they have set in front of this matchup. I don't know if it'll be the opener. A lot of times you can see the Money in the Bank match being the opener. Given the level of talent, and this is not anything to disparage from the women's roster, given the level of talent involved in that men's Money in the Bank, which I will get to in a moment, I believe this will end up being the opener. I think it's a great way to showcase the women. It's an awesome opportunity to get the event started with a bang, get a little bit of energy flowing throughout the arena. Obviously, you're going to have one of these matches as the opener. With that being said, I think you can make a case for nearly everyone in this matchup, and I'll go case by case. I look at someone like Iyo Sky, who's already won the Money in the Bank ladder match last year. She has already expressed this idea, this notion that there needs to be change in damage control. Something needs to give. They can no longer be suffering these losses, which has been a common criticism that fans, that audience members have been giving regarding damage control, as they never really were, in a sense, a credible threat due to the level of losses that they've sustained, for example, in the War Games matchups. If Iyo Sky were to go back-to-back, this would be the first time since 2009 that an individual would go back-to-back winning Money in the Bank matches. That last person was CM Punk, who had done so at WrestleMania 24 and WrestleMania 25. Iyo Sky, this could definitely be a level of momentum thrusted upon her, as she's kind of lost her footing in terms of the card. Ever since that loss to Bayley at WrestleMania 40, we've only seen her interact with pretty much Lyra Valkyria. And although that story being told was interesting enough, it needs a little bit more meat on the bone for someone of Iyo Sky's caliber. I also look at someone like a Zoe Stark, who has recently had her stock being risen, being associated with Shayna Baszler. Aside from that, you can argue that has kept her on television. And what I meant by rising stock is that it's kept her relevant. I look at Zoe Stark, and she hasn't really done anything of substance since that matchup against Trish Stratus. Since that turn, rather. Having her interact with talent like a Sonya Deville and a Shayna Baszler, it keeps her in the limelight. It keeps her story going, and it keeps her an interesting figure on the television show. On top of that, though, I don't know if she's someone that they would give this Money in the Bank contract to. Obviously, in the past, it's been given to someone who hasn't been doing much, and it's a way to thrust them upon the main event scene. So it is a possibility to see Zoe Stark win the Money in the Bank contract. However, with that being said, I do not believe that she will be the one to do so. Another member of the roster that has been added from NXT to the main roster is Lyra Valkyria, who is one of the three individuals who I can definitely see winning this matchup. I think they've really thrusted, and that's a lot of times I've used the word thrusted, but it seems like people are just being thrown up with level of momentum, and they're finding ways to carry on with it. And what I mean by that is ever since Valkyria was drafted to Monday Night Raw, she's been included with feuds such as, Becky Lynch, Nia Jax, obviously Iyo Sky. She's been included with these names. She's been a top star ever since being drafted. We saw her perform in the finals of the Queen of the Ring, and ultimately she did not win it. But it was a good stepping stone for her to get acclimated with the main roster and for audiences to get used to someone of her talent. This could very well be that way of rewarding her for the work that she's done not only in NXT as the former women's champion, but also the way she's really adapted to the main roster. I could definitely see her winning this matchup, but I don't think she's the one to win. Moving on, we have Chelsea Green, who is also, she's from Toronto, she's from the area, and lately WWE has really done a good job of highlighting the hometown hero in any given city. Chelsea Green, I think, would be one of the more entertaining aspects of winning the Money in the Bank contract, especially because she's had this little feud with management, whether it was Nick Aldis, Adam Pearce. She's always had to be a little nitpicky, so having her win something like this gives her a little bit of credibility. It gives her a little bit of substance, and obviously we saw her association with Piper Niven, who was unsuccessfully in defeating Bayley at Clash at the Castle. This would be a natural progression, and I think it's a great opportunity for someone like Chelsea Green because it wouldn't have to be sudden. It wouldn't have to be someone who would have to cash in the Money in the Bank contract within the next 24 hours, which is what they've done from like the years 2018 to like 2022 recently. Because 2023, Iyo Sky had won and she actually held it for like a month or two. They can actually have Chelsea Green hold on to that and gradually begin to become a threat. She adapts. She's no longer this comedy character, and believe me, she can go in the ring. We've seen it. But I think gradually you could see her change into a much more dynamic, much more serious version of herself. But I don't think she's going to win it either. This leads me to my final two picks. You have Naomi, who recently returned at the Royal Rumble after having a short stint in TNA. She's been bumping up against people like Bayley. She's been up against, Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. So she's rubbed shoulders with some of the top stars in the WWE. She's also a former women's champion, having won so back in 2017 at the Elimination Chamber event. She's had her moments in the limelight, but in recent weeks we haven't really seen her as that main eventer that we've known her to be. This could be a great way to have her back on track. And you've already seen her kind of hint at a little bit of a match with Bayley. Now, whether or not there's a heel turn involved, which I don't think so, if Bayley were to come out of SummerSlam, as I'm assuming it'll be her versus Nia Jax at SummerSlam, if she were to come out victorious, I do not see Naomi cashing in and trying to be sneaky about that title opportunity. I could definitely see Naomi having a lengthy babyface run and challenging her with honor and integrity. But given that I do not see Bayley being the champion past SummerSlam, you could very well see her cashing on someone like a Nia Jax. But I'm going to go with the alternative. I'm going to go with the idea that the Money in the Bank contract should be used to help younger stars. But this is something that is a tool to elevate these stars to another level. Case in point, you look at guys like Edge, CM Punk, Dolph Ziggler, Seth Rollins, just to name a few. A lot of these guys had not won world titles prior to winning Money in the Bank. The only exception in that list would have been Dolph Ziggler, who held the world title for a cup of coffee a few years prior. But this is a great opportunity to push those future stars. And I think you'll look no further than Tiffany Stratton. She is officially going to be my pick to win the Women's Money in the Bank matchup. Everything about her, whether it is her character, whether it is her athletic ability, to me, is what the WWE looks for in a premier talent, and especially as a champion. You look at how she's quickly been able to adapt to the WWE style, whether it was rising the ranks in NXT, becoming an NXT Women's Champion, to now coming onto the main roster and becoming one of the more viable talents there. Every time you see her on TV, the audience has a reaction. Now, whether you're a fan of Tiffany or you're not, there's always that reaction, which is what the WWE looks for. She doesn't have the prettiest moonsault for no reason. That is literally her gimmick. I think over time, especially picture this, having her with the Money in the Bank briefcase and then having a custom, pink briefcase, similar to how Damian had his purple briefcase in the past year. She could definitely do a lot with it. And I think the Money in the Bank gimmick itself really lends itself to the heels. Heels do wonderful with this gimmick because it's always that element of surprise, that threatening level of presence that a heel has when they're lurking around with the Money in the Bank briefcase. So for my money, I'm going to go ahead and bet on Tiffany Stratton to win the Money in the Bank contract and essentially punch her ticket into becoming a future world champion whenever she chooses. But sticking with that Money in the Bank contract and becoming a champion, let's go ahead and let's move on to the World Heavyweight Championship. This is one of the premier matchups on the card aside from the men's ladder match or the women's ladder match, which is why I want to tackle it now. Damian Priest defends his world title against a returning Seth freaking Rollins, with the added stipulation that if Seth Rollins were not to win this match, if he were to lose, he can no longer challenge for the World Heavyweight title under the reign of Damian Priest. And on the flip side, if Damian Priest were to lose this matchup, he cannot be a member of the Judgment Day. And the story that has been told in the recent months is that Damian Priest is a world champion that doesn't need help. He doesn't need assistance from his Judgment Day team members. He can do it on his own. In fact, this past week on Monday Night Raw, Damian Priest would even go so far as to say that the Judgment Day needs him a whole hell of a lot more than he needs the Judgment Day. And when Finn Balor confronted him about this claim, he obviously said, well, yeah, I'm the world champion. He has this level of confidence. He doesn't need anyone's help. He has that level of confidence in himself to defeat someone like Seth Rollins. But Finn Balor has claimed that ever since winning that world championship, Damian Priest has changed. And I love the story that they've been telling with the Judgment Day. I think, aside from the Uncle Howdy stuff, it's probably my favorite stuff going on Monday Night Raw every week. Seeing the developments, whether it's Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan, whether it's the whole Carlito aspect, who I think has really shined in his new role as that aspiring member of the Judgment Day. I find him so hilarious with every little interaction he has with Damian Priest or Dominic Mysterio. But the meat of it, the real main entree, is that Damian Priest versus Finn Balor aspect. I think this is going to be a future main event, whether it's for the world title or not. And more likely than not, it won't be. I think this will be a great little feud to have between Finn and Damian, leading to maybe, quite possibly, the ending of the Judgment Day. Because the way the story is currently constructed, without getting too deep into it, because this is a Money in the Bank prediction video, but I can see all signs pointing to the Judgment Day leaving Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest out of the group. I could definitely see Dominic, JD, and Finn Balor, maybe Liv Morgan, but we don't know her intentions. And as of right now, I don't think they're genuine. I think she's trying to break up the Judgment Day. Everyone has their own ulterior motive. Liv Morgan wants to break up the Judgment Day. Finn Balor wants to be world champion. Damian Priest wants to stay the world champion. And that leaves out guys like Dominic, who's just caught in the middle. He wants to do what's the right thing, but he's just caught in the middle. He's just a kid at the end of the day as a member of this unit. But of course, we're just diving too deep into it. That's another video, another episode for itself. Damian Priest is facing Seth Rollins, the man that was originally the world champion heading into WrestleMania 40, but would lose his title to Drew McIntyre, setting up for that cash-in by Damian Priest. This, I think, is a perfect way to book it. Seth Rollins and Damian Priest had a feud running from like November to WrestleMania, essentially, because there was always these teases of being cashed in on. And Seth Rollins takes some time away due to his injuries, and now he's able to rest up and he's ready to go. I think in this matchup, I think it'll be a great matchup. It's really hard to bet against someone like a Seth Rollins, and especially what we've seen from Damian Priest thus far. I loved his matchup against Jey Uso. I loved his matchup against Drew McIntyre. So I have all the reason to believe that he will successfully deliver another great performance against someone like Seth Rollins. With that being said, it really could have been a toss-up with the original stipulation of just a championship match. But because the added element of the whole Seth Rollins not being able to challenge in the future, or Damian Priest being out of the Judgment Day, I don't think that's without reason. They want you to start thinking about the ending of the Judgment Day. I just don't think it happens on this night. I think Damian Priest lives up to his word and beats Seth Rollins on his own clean. Does it kind of hurt Seth? Sure. But Seth Rollins is the type of talent, is the type of character who can take this loss and still move forward. Or perhaps the Judgment Day still finds a way to interfere. Damian Priest said it to Finn Balor this past week. I need you guys to stay out of this. I need to do this on my own. But because he said that doesn't mean they're going to listen. Certainly not if it's Finn. I don't know. It's going to be certainly interesting to see. I'm locking it in. Damian Priest to successfully defend the World Heavyweight Championship. And sticking with the topic of world champions, go over to Friday Night SmackDown and look at what Cody Rhodes is dealing with. You would have thought he would have already been there, done that with the Bloodline, but they somehow managed to regroup and reform into a much different entity. It'll be a 6-man tag team matchup. The babyfaces, it'll be Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, and the WWE Champion Cody Rhodes taking on the Bloodline. The only question is, in what way? There's 4 members of the Bloodline right now, but you need 3. Any combination of Solo Sikoa, you have the Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tongaloa, or perhaps the newly debuted Jacob Fatu. Very, very compelling stuff. I think it's one of the most interesting aspects of the Bloodline since the conclusion of WrestleMania 40. This edition of Jacob Fatu really elevates that story, because now we don't know. That aspect of danger, of threat, has been elevated. There were some people who thought it became stagnant, and it wasn't what it once was. But now that Jacob Fatu is there, it changes the dynamic. If you ask me, I think the lineup that they're going to be going with in regards to the Bloodline, it will be Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and Tongaloa. I don't think they put in Jacob Fatu yet. I would love to see Jacob Fatu in the matchup. I would love to see him in his first matchup, but I don't think it'll be this one. I think in some form or fashion, Jacob will interfere. I think his presence will be known. And with that being said, I think you kind of know where I'm going with. I think the Bloodline wins this matchup. I think you don't want them to suffer a loss this early into this new iteration, especially given what had happened on this recent episode of Friday Night SmackDown. That beatdown of Paul Heyman will go down as one of the most monumental, one of the most significant events in the Bloodline's history, because that'll be the moment that opened the door for a Roman Reigns return. Whether that happens at Money in the Bank or an episode of Friday Night SmackDown, more likely SummerSlam, that has yet to be seen. But it definitely opens the door to another layer, to a new depth of the story being told. I do think the Bloodline wins. I think someone like Kevin Owens will probably take the pinfall, because Randy Orton, I think they're going to start getting ready, start grooming the story of him versus Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes certainly isn't going to take that pinfall. I think that's for sure. If you're going to bet the house on anything, it's like Cody Rhodes isn't taking the pin. I'll put everything on that. Randy's not taking the pin. It'll be Kevin Owens, probably with someone like Solo Sikoa getting that pinfall. I think certainly he needs to get that pin. He recently defeated Kevin Owens on an episode of Friday Night SmackDown, so it won't be all too foreign to us audience members who have already seen it. But I do think the Bloodline emerges victorious. I think that they continue their level of dominance, and it would lead to a potential SummerSlam matchup between seemingly Solo Sikoa and Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. But speaking of the Bloodline, let's talk about their honorary Uso. Sami Zayn will be defending the WWE Intercontinental Championship against the young up-and-coming Braun Breaker. Man, and I gotta tell you, what they're doing with Braun Breaker has been nothing short of impressive. The presentation, you would think that he's going to be a world champion within the next year, really. I think the way they're going about it is smart. They're presenting him as a threatening and dominant force that the entire roster has to keep their head on a swivel for. I mean, look at a guy like Ricochet, Ilya Dragunov. These guys have encountered Braun Breaker, and he's nearly broken them all in half. So bad, to the point where Ricochet is gone from the company, whether you want to believe kayfabe or not. Braun Breaker, though, will be quite the test for Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn obviously winning that Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 40, defeating another threatening presence in Gunther. And he's had a fun little reign there. He had matches against Bronson Reed, Chad Gable, just to name a couple of the most notable title defenses, as well in a triple threat match. But I think, given the story we're telling, I think Sami Zayn is a lot more compelling when he's on the chase. And that can be said for any babyface. When you win the championship, it then becomes, well, what now? Right? But then Braun Breaker, he's new, he's up and coming. He's a force to be reckoned with. That spear might be the best spear I have ever seen. And the way he delivers it with such ferocity. And obviously you have to give credit to those taking it, because they have to be able to sell that maneuver as well. I look at Braun Breaker, and I think he's going to be a star of the future. I think he's going to be a star for the long run, which is why I think they're going to have him defeat Sami Zayn. I just don't see in a world where Sami Zayn beats Braun Breaker. I look at it, and you've already exhausted the idea of a DQ finish or a count-out victory, because we saw that interference from Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser. I think this is going to be a clean victory. I can't see them beating Braun Breaker. He obviously defeated Ilya Dragunov, who was on his own winning streak as a newly acquired talent by Monday Night Raw. But Braun Breaker, I think you're going to want to protect that presentation. Obviously, him losing to Sami Zayn wouldn't be the end of the world, but him beating Sami Zayn, now that's interesting. Now, we were just finished with a lengthy 666-day reign as Intercontinental Champion with Gunther. We very may well be on the cusp of another lengthy Intercontinental Championship run under Braun Breaker. Like I said, I think he is someone who will be a champion in the future, surely a star in the making, a future main eventer for WrestleMania, multi-world champion. I can't say enough things. He fits the mold of what the WWE wants, but also it's just his character work and his ring work. Like this guy, you can't deny him. And I'm looking forward to the matchup itself, as well as how they're going to present it. I think Sami Zayn works best when he is that underdog, when he's trying to fight from underneath and beat this conquering, heel who has all the odds up against the baby face. But I think he'll come just short. I think it'll be one of those deals where he comes so close to beating Braun Breaker, but he just can't put him away until ultimately Braun Breaker delivers the crushing spear that will lead to the 1-2-3 new Intercontinental Champion. That's just my opinion. That's my prediction. But finally, we reach the final matchup for the Money in the Bank as currently constructed. Obviously, they can add a match on the kickoff show or maybe a surprise matchup for Friday Night SmackDown. But as currently constructed, the last matchup, the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, certainly one of the Money in the Bank matches that I've been looking forward to in recent memory. You'll look at the stacked card in itself, the level of talent in this matchup. 5 of these 6 individuals have never won a world championship in the WWE. Obviously, the one that has is Drew McIntyre, which makes a compelling case to win the Money in the Bank briefcase himself. But you also have guys like an LA Knight, like Carmelo Hayes, Chad Gable, Andrade, just to name a few. And I look at the crowd, and like very similar to how the women, and you got to break it down one by one. Right. I'll start with Drew McIntyre. I would love Drew McIntyre to win the Money in the Bank contract and etch his name as a possibility into a new world champion. But Drew McIntyre is the kind of talent where he doesn't need it. He doesn't need that contract. He can get a world title on credibility and merit alone. And I don't think his story with CM Punk by any means is close to being finished. So I don't believe that Drew McIntyre wins this Money in the Bank contract. Similarly, I look at a guy like Chad Gable, whose story is still very much involved with the Alpha Academy, but then you include this interesting little wrinkle with the Wyatt Six. They're clearly out to get him, and quite possibly because of his treatment of his family. You look at the common theme of the Wyatt Six, and it's that forgotten aspect. All these members have been members of their own respective families, forgotten, left away to the side, burdened with that notion of not having a sense of belonging. And here's Chad Gable, who had his family and he mistreated them. Something that they would have wanted, something that they would have been a part of, a family, and he threw it away. So that feud in itself, I don't think is done either. I don't believe that Chad Gable, I think it would be great to have someone like Chad Gable win, because then you lend that opportunity for him to become a future world champion. And I would love to see that, personally. I would love to see that. I look at Carmelo Hayes. He is the prototype. He is the ideal fit for a Money in the Bank winner. He's athletic, great character work, great might work, a great prospect, young. But I think we can still hold on to it. I don't think necessarily he needs to win the Money in the Bank briefcase just yet. I think it would be great. I would love to see him become a future world champion, but we can hold off on that. His time will come. I think we'll probably have him have a run at the U.S. title before the World Championship. But Carmelo Hayes definitely would be a great Money in the Bank holder. I look at also like a guy like Andrade, who he's an interesting choice. I think out of everybody in the match, he's the one where it's like he doesn't really have that much going on, right? I think he's included because of those recent reports that he's unhappy with his direction of his character, which you can't blame him, right? But I don't think he wins either, just because of that idea of like we don't have anything set for him. I think he'll be included in some decent mid-card feuds, but I do not see him winning the match, personally. And that's a shame. I think he's one of those guys who will end up being a member of like the highlight reel. So it leaves me down to two. LA Knight, yeah, or Jey Uso. Two baby faces. And for me, the rule is you can only have one and one. One heel, one baby face. I have a heel winning that women's Money in the Bank ladder match, so I think a baby face wins the men's ladder match. I think LA Knight is a clear-cut favorite. He's made for the main event scene. This guy, the rise that he has been on in the last year, very much like Jey Uso, who's been on a rise. These two individuals came from lower mid-card. Of course, Jey Uso was a tag team, wasn't really a single star. But since coming on his own, these two have really found ways to get over with the crowd and propel themselves into some of the top tier baby faces in the company, in the sport, really. Jey Uso has gotten so over with his entrance with the Fireflies, with his wrestling character, the charisma, yeet. LA Knight has gotten over with his mic work, with his throwback style of like the Attitude Era, where we have like a Rock and Austin type of vibe. He got the word yeah over. It's a toss-up. I think either one would be great. I would love either one of these guys to win. I could make an argument that any one of these guys winning the Money in the Bank match, I'll be happy. Literally with any of them. But I'm stuck to these two. And I look at a guy like LA Knight. He's involved with Logan Paul. He beat Logan Paul and Santos Escobar in that triple threat match to qualify for this very ladder match. Which is why I would not be surprised if Logan Paul showed up and interfered. LA Knight is currently in his feud with Logan Paul. I think they'll for sure have that SummerSlam matchup for the United States Championship, which I'm hoping LA Knight finally wins. He needs to have a championship attached to his resume. He's earned that right. He should be the one to dethrone Logan Paul. But because he's embroiled in this feud with Logan Paul, I think it immediately disqualifies him from my predictions. I think Jey Uso wins. Jey Uso, and if you remember back then, at the beginning of 2024, Jey Uso made it a goal. He made it a resolution to finish the year 2024 with some singles championship gold. This is it. This is how you do it. We planted the seed back in January. We are now in the middle of July. He wins the Money in the Bank, has a guaranteed championship opportunity at the time, the place of his choosing. Jey Uso, I don't know if they're gonna call it MonYEET in the Bank or Yeet in the Bank or Money in the Yeet, whatever they want to call it. Jey Uso, mark it down. Don't even pencil it down. Put that in permanent marker. Jey Uso will win the Money in the Bank ladder match and become a champion by the end of 2024. My only concern is, are they going to go the Austin Theory route and have him cash in for the mid-card title? Or are we going to see a world champion, Jey Uso? If my money was on it, I think they're going to go mid-card. But I hate the idea of, like, I have a contract for any title of my choosing, and I settle for the mid-card. No, you want to be the world champion. No matter who it is. You have a guaranteed opportunity at that title. Why not go to the top? It should be fun. It should be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. The Money in the Bank premium live event is always something that I look forward to. I have had so many fond memories of these Money in the Bank matches and the cash-ins in itself, so hopefully we'll be adding to the legacy of the Money in the Bank gimmick. But with that being said, go ahead and sound off in the comments below. Who do you guys think will emerge as the Money in the Bank winners for each respective match? What are your thoughts on the Judgment Day's current direction? And what do you think about my prediction regarding Braun Breaker? Will he win this Intercontinental Championship? Will he become a future star like I said he will? Only time will tell. Of course, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you guys again for joining me on this episode of the Jey Area Podcast, and I will be seeing you guys in the next one.